Everyone thought he was just a weak, harmless high school teacher, an easy target for his students. But little did they know, he was a former Yakuza gang leader, and when the truth came out, their world turned upside down. The story begins with Onizuka casually smoking a cigarette while sneaking a peek at high school girls' underwear. Suddenly, two bad guys show up, angry and ready to confront him for what he's doing. To prove his strength, Onizuka punches a telephone booth so hard it leaves both guys stunned. Without wasting time, he takes them down with ease. After that, his friend Ryuji shows up on a motorcycle, reminding him that he's late for school. In a rush, Onizuka takes some money from the criminals and quickly leaves. While riding, he daydreams about becoming a teacher surrounded by beautiful young students. But his daydream is interrupted when he gets stopped by the police for speeding. When he gets to school, Onizuka watches the students in short skirts with excitement. He notices a girl from the volleyball club who has mostly exposed legs before going to the staff room. There, the principal introduces Onizuka and other new trainee teachers, giving them a quick overview of their roles. Onizuka is then taken to his class by the homeroom teacher, only to find a chaotic scene. Onizuka stood in front of the class and introduced himself, but no one cared. They completely ignored him. This made him really upset. Then, one of the students walked up to him, stared him in the eyes, and spit on his face. The rest of the class started cheering for the student like it was some kind of show. Onizuka felt humiliated. The students laughed at him and kept teasing him, making fun of the whole situation. The next day, Onizuka starts a lesson about famous quotes. To his surprise, the volleyball girl from earlier confidently answers one of his questions. Impressed, Onizuka goes to her, and she introduces herself as Nana Mizuki. Later that night, Onizuka runs into Nana again. She tearfully asks if she can stay with him, saying she ran away from home. Though unsure, he agrees. At his place, Nana cooks sukiyaki and talks about her troubled family. Onizuka quickly cleans his room like a whirlwind. Suddenly, Nana gets really close to him, making his heart race and his mind wander. As the moment heats up, she starts taking off her clothes. But just when things are about to get serious, she stops and reveals it was all just a prank. The three of Onizuka's students burst in with a camera, taking embarrassing photos. They blackmail him, demanding 1 million yen in a week or they will expose the pictures. The students don't celebrate for long. As they brag about their plan, a gang surrounds them. To their surprise, the gang leader is scared of Onizuka and begs for mercy. The boys think they are safe, but Onizuka tells them they're his next targets. He punishes them by beating them up and dunking them in a nearby lake for trying to trap him. Later, Onizuka talks to Ryuji, wondering if he's really meant to be a teacher. The next day, Onizuka is surprised to see his rowdy students acting better. They start cleaning the school and behaving themselves out of fear. At the end of the day, they bow to him, and another teacher congratulates him on his success in disciplining them. As Onizuka gets to his bike, he sees Nana waiting for him. She tries to convince him to go with her, even offering a pair of her panties. Carefully, he agrees, and goes with her to her fancy house. There, she shocks him by throwing away a plate of expensive sushi he was about to eat, and suggests they go for a ride. During the ride, she talks about her parents' cold relationship, saying they live together but don't act like a family. Later that night, Onizuka takes action. He storms into Nana's house with a sledgehammer and breaks down the wall between her parents' rooms. They protest and threaten to call the police, but he leaves after creating a big hole. Nana smiles at the hole, clearly happy with his bold action. Months later, the school term ends. Onizuka packs his things, determined to return as a full-time teacher. At Ryuji's shop, he's reminded that he still needs to pass the teaching exam. Feeling down, Onizuka considers drinking to forget his worries, but Ryuji gives him a recommendation letter, allowing him to skip the test and go straight to the interview. The next day, Onizuka takes the bus to his interview. While riding the bus, a woman accidentally bumps into Onizuka. He's shocked by how attractive she is. Soon after, he notices an older man bothering her. Without hesitating, Onizuka steps in, punches the man, and kicks him off the bus. The woman thanks him for his help. Later, while waiting outside the vice principal's office, the same woman sits next to him and introduces herself as Fuyutsuki. They talk briefly before Onizuka goes in for his interview. When he enters the interview room, he freezes. The man he threw off the bus is sitting at the head of the table, revealed to be the vice principal. He glares at Onizuka with anger. Without hesitation, the vice principal ridicules Onizuka's resume and character, calling him unfit to teach. Finally, the vice principal tells Onizuka to leave, saying their school doesn't need someone like him. Feeling defeated, Onizuka walks out with his head down. He stops by the student store and buys a bottle of milk coffee. While drinking it, he talks to the woman behind the counter, telling her that he became a teacher because he didn't want students to feel worthless like he did when he was young, being called trash by his teachers. Suddenly, 3 rough boys rush through the hall, looking to attack the vice principal. Hoping to win favor, Onizuka steps in front of the man. But when the boys reveal that the vice principal had called them useless and trash, Onizuka changes his mind. He slams the vice principal to the ground and tells the boys that he handled it for them, then walks off. Later, Fuyutsuki visits Ryuji and tells him that Onizuka still has a chance to become a teacher if he makes it to the interview by 6 p.m. Ryuji calls Onizuka, who is driving a truck for a delivery job. Realizing this is his last chance, Onizuka quickly turns the truck around and races to the school, dodging traffic and police along the way. When he finally arrives, the school looks empty. Just as he's about to give up, the woman from the student store shows up, revealing that she is actually the chairperson of the school. She leads him to her office and surprises him by appointing him as a teacher right then and there, asking him to fix the issues at the school in his own way. Onizuka gladly accepts. Shocked by the turn of events, he meets up with Ryuji and Fuyutsuki, who, to his surprise, has also been hired as the vice principal. Onizuka arrives with his giant truck, nearly running them over. Unfazed, he loads his things and follows the chairperson to his tiny new home on the school rooftop. He drags along a shy student to help carry his luggage, while he lazily holds only a pillow, complaining about being tricked into the job. That evening, the vice principal, still angry about Onizuka's appointment, tries to convince the chairperson to change her mind. She ignores him, making him even angrier. But his mood changes when he realizes Onizuka has been given the tough class 3-4, known for breaking teachers. The next day, Onizuka is introduced as the new teacher for class 3-4. The students, doubtful of his appearance with dyed hair and piercings, wonder if he's even qualified. Annoyed, Onizuka pulls out his teaching certificate to show them, but in his clumsiness, he accidentally tears it in half, causing the students to laugh. In the staff room, the vice principal scolds Onizuka for embarrassing the school, but Onizuka ignores him, popping in his earbuds. Later, during the start-of-term dinner under cherry blossom trees, Fuyutsuki nervously shows Onizuka 2 photos of the previous teacher for class 3-4. In the first, she's young and full of energy. In the second, after teaching the class, she's unrecognizable, overweight and worn out. That night, as Onizuka tries to sleep, he hears strange noises. He goes to check and catches a panty thief in the act and stops a couple from doing naughty things on school grounds. As he heads back to his room, he finds Yoshikawa, the shy student from earlier, standing on the edge of the roof, bruised and beaten. Yoshikawa says he can't take the bullying anymore and is about to jump. Onizuka acts fast, pulling him back. The two fall onto the roof of the vice principal's prized car. Back at Onizuka's place, he tells Yoshikawa that he became a teacher because he wanted to enjoy life, not take it too seriously. He borrows a stack of games from Yoshikawa and leaves, unaware that Yoshikawa is watching him from the window with hope in his eyes. One morning, Onizuka notices a commotion near the school's notice board. Curious, he pushes through the crowd and is shocked to find a huge, embarrassing poster of himself in a naughty pose. Before he can react, Fuyutsuki appears, slaps him, and runs off, disgusted, assuming the worst about his character. Confused, Onizuka looks at the poster again and notices a scar on the figure's rear, which he doesn't have. In a hasty attempt to prove his innocence, he pulls down his pants in front of the crowd to show them it's not him. However, his actions only shock the students more. Back in the staff room, Onizuka stares at the poster, feeling hopeless. One of the teachers suggests that maybe Onizuka did something like that without realizing it, making him even more uncertain. At that moment, the vice principal storms in, angry about his precious car being ruined, and attacks Onizuka in a fit of rage. The other teachers manage to hold him back, but the chaos leaves Onizuka feeling drained. Meanwhile, a group of class 3-4 students gathers, happily celebrating their prank. They wonder how long it will take for Onizuka to snap. Unaware of their plot, Onizuka walks into the classroom, only to find another scandalous poster, this time showing him with the vice principal in a compromising pose. Disturbed by the thought of such an image, Onizuka storms out of the room in frustration. Later, the vice principal receives the new poster and falls into despair. His home life is falling apart too. His wife and daughter have been ignoring him for months. His car was the only thing that made him happy, and now it's gone, thanks to Onizuka. As his stress grows, he becomes even angrier at Onizuka. Onizuka tries to explain himself to Fuyutsuki, but she brushes him off, saying his personal hobbies are his own business. The next day, Onizuka finds another image on the notice board, this time showing him leaving a love hotel with a woman. Again, Fuyutsuki slaps him and walks away, tears in her eyes. Confused and doubting his own mind, Onizuka goes to the rooftop, wondering if he has a split personality, or if his soul leaves his body at night. Yoshikawa approaches him and nervously tells him that one of their classmates has been editing the images by putting Onizuka's face onto real photos. Onizuka, however, refuses to act on this information, saying he doesn't trust students who betray their classmates. Instead, he promises to handle it in his own way. Realizing her mistake, Fuyutsuki later apologizes to Onizuka and offers to make it up to him by treating him to dinner. Onizuka gladly agrees. Meanwhile, the pranksters gather around Kikuchi, who's busy editing another fake image on his computer. They proudly claim this will be the final blow, making sure Onizuka gets fired. Just as they're celebrating, Onizuka suddenly appears. The boys freeze in fear as he demands to see the image. They panic and try to escape, but Onizuka pulls Kikuchi aside. Instead of getting angry, Onizuka surprises Kikuchi by hiring him. He asks the tech-savvy student to create fake images using adult magazines and offers to pay him 3,000 yen. Relieved, Kikuchi agrees to the deal, and the pranksters are left stunned. Elsewhere, the vice principal tries to reconnect with his family. He tells his wife and daughter about the new car the insurance company gave him and suggests a trip to the hot springs. At first, they refuse, but they agree when he offers to buy them gifts. During class, Onizuka tells his students a strange story about a man who bought shumai dumplings, only to find them mysteriously disappearing one by one. The class laughs at the silly story, but some of Onizuka's critics scold their classmates for enjoying it. They go to Kikuchi, asking him to create more fake images, but he refuses. One evening, Fuyutsuki finds herself in Onizuka's room, watching him play video games. Curious, she asks how his classes are going, and he casually replies, "Just the usual." Onizuka, always cheerful, offers to let her play, but she hesitates, admitting she doesn't know how. Without hesitation, Onizuka gently takes her hands and shows her how to play. As he does, he leans in a little closer and catches a hint of her scent. The moment is interrupted when Yoshikawa walks in. Onizuka immediately goes back to the game, and Yoshikawa eagerly joins him. Fuyutsuki, feeling out of place, quietly excuses herself and leaves the room. Later that night, a group of girls from Yoshikawa's class ambushes him. Yoshikawa is cornered by a group of girls who forcefully humiliate him, taking his clothes and taunting him relentlessly. The embarrassment pushes him to the edge, and he retreats to the rooftop, feeling desperate. Meanwhile, Onizuka is on his way to meet Kikuchi to collect some altered images. As he walks through the school grounds, he notices Yoshikawa dangerously close to the roof's edge. Before Onizuka can shout, Yoshikawa jumps. Onizuka reacts quickly, running toward the vice principal's car, jumping on its roof and catching Yoshikawa in midair. The impact destroys the car, and it bursts into flames moments later. Onizuka scolds Yoshikawa for his reckless behavior, reminding him about the importance of life. Determined to get justice, Onizuka tracks down the girls responsible for bullying Yoshikawa and confronts them at a karaoke club. He barges into their private room, blocking the exit to prevent them from escaping. Onizuka encourages Yoshikawa to stand up to his bullies, and with newfound courage, Yoshikawa points them out. Onizuka then ties up the girls and delivers his own form of justice, using a large gloved stick to discipline them. He lifts their skirts slightly, takes a photo of them in their embarrassed state, and leaves the rest of the punishment up to Yoshikawa before exiting the room. The next day, Yumura, the president of the PTA, arrives at the school and accuses Onizuka of improper behavior with her daughter. She demands that Onizuka be fired immediately. The chairperson responds calmly, stating that no decision can be made without consulting Onizuka first. Fuyutsuki, increasingly concerned about Onizuka's reputation, checks on him and finds him smoking casually on the rooftop. She notices his swollen, discolored hand and questions him, but Onizuka brushes it off, joking that it's from his intense daily workouts. However, when she insists, Onizuka realizes his hand has become significantly worse. Meanwhile, Yumura takes action by calling for a PTA council meeting to decide Onizuka's fate. In the classroom, Anko, one of the girls who bullied Yoshikawa, smugly tells her friends that Onizuka will be fired by the next day. When another student asks why Onizuka punished them, Anko spitefully suggests that Onizuka has a disturbing obsession. In the staff room, Other teachers gossip about Onizuka's likely dismissal, while the vice principal, still angry about his destroyed car, claims that he saw through Onizuka's true nature from the start. Later, Fuyutsuki and Ryuji visit Onizuka in the hospital, but find his room locked with chains. A nurse explains that Onizuka had repeatedly tried to leave the hospital, forcing them to secure his room. Alarmed, they enter the room and find it empty, with a rope made of hospital sheets dangling out of the window. The nurse reminds them that the room is on the 4th floor. The next day, Yumura stands before the PTA council, delivering a passionate speech about Onizuka's supposed misdeeds. She insists that he should be removed immediately, arguing that his presence harms the school. As her speech reaches its peak, Onizuka bursts into the room dramatically, wearing a monkey costume. Completely unfazed by the gravity of the meeting, he casually greets Yumura with a cheeky hand gesture, leaving the room in stunned silence. Yumura, still furious, insists that Onizuka is unfit to be a teacher. As the committee prepares to vote on his dismissal, Yoshikawa suddenly appears from behind the stage. Without saying a word, Yoshikawa begins to remove his jacket, revealing the bruises and marks on his back. He courageously explains that these injuries were caused by relentless bullying from Anko and her friends, and that Onizuka stepped in to protect him when no one else would. Yumura, however, refuses to believe Yoshikawa's testimony, accusing him of fabricating an elaborate story. Before Yumura can sway the committee, the speakers suddenly blare a recording of Anko and her friends cruelly plotting to torment Yoshikawa. The room falls silent as Yumura confronts Anko, demanding the truth. Under pressure, Anko reluctantly admits to the bullying, but tries to shift the blame onto her mother, claiming her mother forced her to act as the perfect girl. Onizuka steps in, advising Anko to stop blaming her parents and to focus on finding more positive things in life. His words seem to resonate, and she falls silent. Later, the chairwoman announces that Yumura has withdrawn her complaint against Onizuka. That evening, Fuyutsuki checks on Onizuka, relieved to find him in his usual carefree mood, happily playing video games with Yoshikawa. The next day, Muai, a student from class 3-4, warns his classmates about Onizuka's upcoming home visits, urging them not to let him inside their homes. He insists that if Onizuka does manage to get in, they should make him so uncomfortable that he leaves on his own. While some students think Muai is overreacting, he firmly ensures their compliance. Onizuka, however, dismisses the idea of home visits, claiming he's already met the parents at school meetings and isn't interested in seeing some middle-aged woman. But when Kikuchi and Yoshikawa mention that Muai's mother is only 20 years old and stunningly attractive, Onizuka becomes curious and heads to Muai's house, hoping to meet her. Muai catches Onizuka staring at a photo of his mother and quickly pulls her inside, urging her to stay busy cooking dinner, while worrying about what Onizuka might try. The next day, a pair of girls tease Muai, saying they saw his mother with Onizuka late at night and hinting that they might be getting along too well. Furious, Muai punches a wall and vows to keep Onizuka away from his mother. Later in class, Onizuka surprises the students by announcing that he won't be doing home visits after all, calling them unnecessary and encouraging them to make excuses to their parents. That evening, Muai returns home to find his mother dressed up and ready for a date. She tells him she'll be home late, leaving him to cook dinner for himself. Concerned, Muai secretly follows her and discovers she's meeting Onizuka at a noodle bar. He sits at a distance, trying to stay unnoticed, but when a waiter demands he order something, his loud response draws Onizuka and his mother's attention. Muai quickly flees. Confused and upset, he later tells his friends he thinks they went to a love hotel. Later, Muai encounters some gang members and retreats back home, where he finds his mother asleep. The next day, Muai confronts Onizuka at the school's bathhouse, challenging him to a showdown. If Onizuka wants to date his mother, he'll have to beat him first. Onizuka agrees, and the two face off in a bike racing video game. Muai takes an early lead, but eventually loses as Onizuka outpaces him, winning with ease. Smugly, Onizuka declares that he'll proceed with the date. In a final act of defiance, Muai shakes Onizuka's hand, but locks him to a statue with handcuffs before running away with his mother. Onizuka breaks free and chases after them, easily catching up. When they turn a corner, an oncoming truck nearly hits Muai's mother, but Onizuka heroically saves her. Dusting himself off, he prepares for his next home visit. Muai's mother praises Onizuka's unconventional but effective teaching methods. But Muai remains convinced that Onizuka is eccentric and storms off in frustration. Back in class, Onizuka introduces a nostalgic game called Cocky S. where players can ask humorous or silly questions. The class enjoys the lighthearted atmosphere until Moai sarcastically remarks that no one plays such games anymore. Onizuka smirks and asks the game if Moai has smelly feet. The game cheekily responds with a resounding yes, causing the class to erupt in laughter. He teasingly asks if Moai has a fungal infection, and the game gleefully answers yes, prompting another wave of laughter. To escalate the humor, Onizuka asks who in the class has a strong attachment to their mother. The game responds with Moai, causing the class to erupt into even more laughter. Embarrassed and angry, Moai tries to confront Onizuka, while a student adds fuel to the fire by joking that Moai's mom is an absolute beauty. As the bell rings, Onizuka nonchalantly mentions he has a private meeting and leaves the class, leaving Moai fuming. Later, Moai storms home only to find his mother dressed elegantly once again. She invites him and his friends to go bowling, but Moai initially refuses. However, when his friends eagerly volunteer to carry her bag, Moai reluctantly agrees. At the bowling alley, while waiting, Moai's mother mentions she's meeting someone. Much to Moai's annoyance, that someone turns out to be Onizuka, who greets her warmly, but grimaces when he sees Moai tagging along. The group splits into two teams, Onizuka and Moai, against Moai's two friends and his mother. Despite their rivalry, Onizuka and Moai work surprisingly well together. As the game intensifies, Moai's mother receives an urgent work call and asks Onizuka to watch over the kids while she leaves. Once she's gone, Moai and Onizuka escalate their competitive antics, hurling bowling balls at each other. Onizuka ends the chaos by grabbing two bowling balls and running off with Moai's friends. While wandering down a dark street, one of Moai's friends nervously wonders if they've gone too far. Moai brushes off their concerns and angrily kicks the tire of a parked car. Suddenly, a group of intimidating men surrounds them, demanding compensation for the damage Moai caused. Moai denies any wrongdoing, but when he tries to leave, one of the men pretends to fall and cries out in fake pain. They demand 1 million yen for the car and medical expenses, threatening to take them to their base for punishment. Onizuka suddenly appears, lighting a cigarette, introducing himself as the head of the Santama group. He gives Moai and his friends a glimmer of hope. However, Onizuka laughs it off, clarifying that he's just a doorman and denies any connection to the men. The group locks Moai and his friends in sleeping bags and hangs them upside down from a tree. They debate the best punishment until Onizuka suggests bungee jumping off a bridge, which they enthusiastically agree to. Moai is the first to jump, suspended by a dangerously thin rope. After a tense moment, Onizuka pulls him back up and takes down the gang, sparing one member who escapes in a van. Onizuka, Moai, and his friends hop into the car Moai had kicked earlier and give chase. During the pursuit, Moai finds a photo in the glove compartment and realizes the car belongs to the vice principal. The next morning, the vice principal is overjoyed to find his car returned, only to discover it completely wrecked. Before he can process the damage, two police officers arrive to question him about a late-night chase. Meanwhile, during PE class, Fukuroda, the gym teacher, ogles the students running laps when someone shouts for him to dodge. A rocket hits him square in the face, leaving him furious. Moai and his friends flee, with Onizuka following after realizing what's happened. Later, Fukuroda storms into Onizuka's classroom, vowing to make him pay for the prank. However, when he sees Onizuka casually kick a block of wood, his anger softens. Instead, he proposes a swimming competition. At the pool, Fukuroda confidently flaunts his physique, while Onizuka casually eats lunch, completely unimpressed. Moai and his friends take the opportunity to start a betting pool, with both Onizuka and Fukuroda betting their entire wallets. As the race begins, Fukuroda swims confidently, boasting about his skills. Just as he's about to win, Onizuka effortlessly overtakes him, clinching victory. Shocked, Fukuroda accuses Onizuka of cheating and demands 2 rematches, only to lose both. Humiliated, Fukuroda retreats to the staff room, where he accidentally bumps into a girl near the lockers. As Tomoko rushes down the hallway, she accidentally bumps into Onizuka, who, momentarily distracted by her figure, asks for her name. Flustered, Tomoko stammers, "Tomoko," before scurrying away. Later, she meets Miyabi, a girl notorious for her disdain toward Onizuka, and proudly shares how she hid a bag of stolen women's underwear in his locker. The next day, the vice principal, furious over reports of stolen underwear, announces a surprise locker inspection to get to the bottom of it. Teachers spend the entire day searching but come up empty-handed. Then, with a sly smile, Miyabi suggests they inspect the teachers' lockers, The vice principal agrees and orders the search to start with Onizuka's locker. As they approach his locker, Onizuka grows visibly nervous, attempting to stop them, which only raises suspicion. Fukuroda, still bitter about his swimming race defeat, seizes the opportunity to restrain Onizuka and insists they open the locker. Miyabi watches with glee, anticipating Onizuka's downfall. But to her shock, the locker contains nothing but Onizuka's dirty laundry. Fukuroda, disappointed, chastises Onizuka about being a role model. To prove a point, he opens his own locker, and to everyone's astonishment, the missing bag of underwear is inside. Embarrassed, Fukuroda tries to explain it away, claiming his strong upper body must have accidentally crushed the bag and volunteers to dispose of it. However, as he nervously carries the bag out, it rips open, spilling its contents all over the hallway. The fiasco severely tarnishes the teacher's reputation. Meanwhile, Miyabi and her friends, enraged at Tomoko for bungling their plan, throw her into the swimming pool as punishment and warn her to stay out of their way. Soaked and humiliated, Tomoko climbs out of the pool, sits alone, and cries, replaying Miyabi's cruel words in her mind. The next day, Miyabi's friends excitedly tell her they've submitted her name for a beauty contest. Despite her reluctance, they pressure her into participating. As they walk down the hallway, Tomoko cheerfully greets them, desperate to fit in, but they ignore her. When Tomoko gets to her desk, she finds an ice cream cone placed on her seat, ruining her clothes. During class, Fukuroda notices Tomoko standing awkwardly and quickly realizes what happened. Later, Tomoko confides in Onizuka about the bullying. Onizuka, watching her sit isolated in class, her chair angled away from the others and being pelted with small objects, slams his hand on a desk in fury, startling everyone. He immediately demands their help in building a soda rocket, a sudden but effective diversion. That evening, Tomoko sits alone in a park, playing make-believe to cheer herself up. Memories of Miyabi's harsh treatment bring her to tears. Onizuka finds her and joins in her game, lifting her spirits. She then brings him to her family's ramen shop, where her father offers him a bowl and asks how Tomoko is doing. He admits she's clumsy, but has a kind heart. In her room, Tomoko opens up to Onizuka about her insecurities. She shares how she's always struggled with academics, has poor coordination, and is teased for her appearance, especially her figure, which has made her self-conscious since childhood. She compares herself to Miyabi, feeling inadequate. Onizuka reassures her, pointing out her unique qualities, and telling her she's special in her own way. He hands her a card with instructions to wear a bunny girl costume and stand at a specific location for a project. Despite initial hesitation, Tomoko agrees. The next day, Tomoko arrives at the location, where several media scouts approach her. Remembering Onizuka's advice, she declines their offers until one mentions his name. She's whisked away to a car, where a stylist dresses her in a PE uniform and applies makeup. Meanwhile, Miyabi arrives at the beauty contest venue, confident she's the only contestant. To her surprise, her entire class shows up, explaining that they received notes from Onizuka asking them to attend. Moments later, Onizuka arrives, waiting expectantly for someone. Tomoko steps out of the car, transformed and stunning, leaving everyone speechless. Onizuka proudly announces her as a contestant. When someone points out that Miyabi is also competing, Onizuka grins and declares them rivals. Miyabi, caught off guard, stands frozen in disbelief. And so, another unpredictable chapter comes to a close, with Onizuka's unconventional methods shaking things up yet again in ways no one could have foreseen.